Okay, so this lesson here, I'm going to show how to draft the skull. I know for many it presents a real problem, and here's the approach. Again, and the skull occupies volume, right? And we need to locate this volume that the skull occupies into a space, right? So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to employ the master cube, right? So I'm going to draw out my master cube to help me visualize the space of the page, right? Okay. Right, so I'm going to, the space is moving back, so I'm going to situate my back plane back here, nice and light. And remember, the master cube is just there to help us visualize the volume of the space that the skull is going to appear in, right? And so if we look here, the cloth is sort of hanging down. It's following the space, coming this way, right? And it's kind of going away from us, right? The space, if we were to visualize the surface right there that the skull is sitting on, right? And so as we did before, we first located a footprint, right? So we're going to try to visualize the footprint. In other words, the footprint that the skull occupies, right? So let's say this is the front of the jaw right there, right? And so there's a space that kind of goes back like this, right? That the skull occupies, right? And then if we're to look at the height of the skull, right, it's right there, okay? Right up through there, okay? And essentially, the skull, it occupies a volume, right? I can go right around it, okay? There's the skull, the volume of the skull, right? And the skull has a front plate, okay? And then, which is right there, okay? And then the snout area, which is right there, right? So we have a modular approach. The volume, which is the cranium in the back, right? And then the front plate of the face, okay? And then the snout area right there. And there's a rough representation of the space that the skull occupies, right? And so the skull has a symmetry to it, right? There's a line that goes right down the middle of the skull, right like that, let's say, right? And so as we see, the eye sockets are on the two sides. There's an eye socket on this side, okay? There's an eye socket on this side. Okay, there's this nose bridge right here. Okay, there's the upper bridge and the teeth that wrap around like this, right? There is this cheekbone that goes around the eye socket, right? Goes back like that. And it kind of attaches to the skull like that. And then there's the jawbone, which fits right underneath here, right? And then moves forward, okay? And then so on this side, we have that little bridge. And then we have the cheekbone that comes down, right? And then catches the upper bridge, and so forth. And so there you go, the placement of the skull, right? And so then you can chisel away the details, okay, and help define it a little bit more accurately like this, right? And so And now everything will fall into place, right? We can see that the volume is moving towards us, right? That's the descriptive line direction, all this in the shadow area, right? And if we're to put a light source here, right, from left to right, right, you can see the shadow beginning here, right on that edge, comes out. And in the back, it's not quite clear because it's all dark back there. And this cloth, these folds start to take place. Okay, and there you've situated the skull. Now watch, so this line direction is the descriptive direction, right? And you can see where the eye sockets, they go in, and inside they're also round back in there, right? The eye sockets go in, so that line direction in relationship to the roundness of the skull, okay? And so here we see that nose, the division, right? And the teeth wrap around. I can just rough it in, right? Okay, and there you go. There is the sort of the approach to locating the skull on the page, right? And of course, we consider the light in our development of values, right? We go to the outside and we develop the values and we bring the values up to the edge of the light, right? And I'm following the direction of the space, the page, dominant directions coming towards us, right? So I'm going to make an effort to harness the object, okay, with the surrounding value to define it, okay? And this is where it just takes time and work. So I'm following the dominant direction, okay, of the space. Okay. Right, and there you have it. You have the skull nicely situated, again, and if you practice that, right, the first thing is to be able to visualize that footprint in the space, okay, and then correlate the volume to that footprint, okay. Just takes a little practice, and certainly you need to first visualize the space that, you know, the master cube helps you visualize the space that the object is going to be drafted into. And so, you know, you can see where the light hits the skull in different areas, right? The bridge is collecting light, the nose bridge, right? This whole shadow area on the inside, and then the light is being caught on that cheekbone. All right, this whole area is in the shadow area. Right, so this is all in the shadow area, and then there's that transition area. I'm just roughing out the shadows. Right, there's light on that, so we're going to add value around it. And following the dominant direction, right, this descriptive direction of the line. Okay, and so let's darken that shadow area in a little bit so it can support the object a little bit so you can see it. Nice and dark under there, and I'm not overcommitting my values. I'm still working light. Okay, working to smooth things out, hitting the hot spots, drawing up to the light. Always keeping in mind our light source is coming from left to right. All right, so it's going to be brighter here, darker back here. Right, you can see the skull appearing in full glory here, right? And we can, there is a shadow core there, so we can define that. And I'm going around the skull. Right, and you can see how dark that background is going to become, right? And we need to draw up to the edge of the skull to create that nice crisp transition, right? And you can actually see how dark that background has to get in order to create that drama. Okay. Right, and the shadow area is always handled the same way as the cloth, the material that the object is sitting on, or whatever the substrate is, so that it just appears like a darker area. If you start handling it in a different way, it starts to separate itself graphically. Okay. So it's important to design and situate your object in the space well prior to developing the drawing further, because you're going to spend a lot of time on developing these values, right? You can see that it's a lot of work and very rewarding. If your design is done well, your results will be that much better and very rewarding, right? So it's light to dark. See how I've kind of faded it off into that direction. Okay. I'm going to pull these values so that there's plenty of room to create that fold. And notice the angle of my pencil. I've created a nice covering surface on the pencil. And if I wanted to do a precision grip with some detail, like right in here, I just twist my pencil and I take advantage of that little point there, and I can touch in these voids between the teeth in a crisp manner, and that gives it some of that detail that brings interest to the drawing, right? And the jawbone, right? There's a dark area, the upper bridge, right in there, the lower, right? And so you can see the image starting to come alive. Okay, so I'm gonna work on my background some more. Bringing in the necessary values. And definitely want to create a progression of folds there. Dark and light areas. Gliding the pencil over, slowly developing the values, right? And the background is very low contrast, you see? It's dark but low contrast. Okay, now I can go back into developing the values on the skull, right? I'm following the direction of the space, right? It's going into the skull. Okay, these areas, same thing. There's a little bit of a shadow core. That bridge is around there. Some values there. Right, and we can always use the kneaded eraser if we need to pop out some values there. Right, in this case, I'm gonna just tamp it a little bit. Okay, there you go. And you can see how dark that background's got to get to support that bright. A little bit of a bridge there. Okay. All right. All right, and this space goes back. Just gliding the pencil, a little bit of value. Going around the object, always the descriptive lines. Right? It's going down and back. exaggerating the values a little bit, which is okay in this case. Teeth wrap around. Okay, and there's some that supportive bone structure there. And on top. So everything falls into place, right? If you have it designed properly, with all the considerations, right? Everything falls into place. Okay. Right under here, there's the bone part that fits underneath. And that sharp shadow area right there. Right, kind of. And the shadow is sharp here, and then it dissipates going out here. Okay, we're starting to get the nice contrasty values here. And those folds that come out of from behind. Okay. 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 And there you go. There's a quick rendition of a skull. Okay, let's tweak the values here. Okay. It's kind of, the skull is very smooth, so you gotta kind of glide the pencil, right? little shadow areas around the teeth. Okay. Right, and the objective was to create the light, right, that defines the skull, right? So we drew around the light. And so here's where you can play a little trick with the that little highlight along the edge of the nose there. Right, nice. Right, and right along the bottom there. Okay, and then you can go back and tighten up the some of the nuances. Definitely a shadow core there. Right. Okay. You can see how you first start the drawing in general terms, and then you begin to define it more and more as the drawing progresses. You go in and you begin to work the definitions ever so slightly, all right? And you always work the whole drawing at once, okay? There we go. See how those dark areas in the folds help to define the skull. And those dark areas are very important to finish the drawing. See how, like, at this point, I'm putting in those dark areas, right? And they go in in the end of the drawing, towards the end, right? The shadow is sharp here, and then it gets soft. So go. Okay, and there you go. Demo 416. Very good. So there you got it. So we have a skull situated nicely in the space. Okay. Very good.